In this week's watercolor tutorial, I'm sharing one of my personal favorite ways to practice, an exercise that has absolutely made me a better painter.
Hey friends, welcome back. My name is Shayda Campbell and today is the last day of my 30s. This video will go out on Saturday, but today is my final day being 39 and I'm gonna spend that day painting. What else would I do? And I have a little watercolor painting practice for you that I want to share. It's something I do often in my own practice time, and the idea is simple. We're simplifying our flowers. So we're not getting hung up on lots of precise details. We're not even really playing with wet into wet. We're just looking at shapes and trying to capture the flowers in their most basic shapes on the page. It's about seeing things in a new light and practicing your painting in a new way. With that said, let's just get right into it and feel free to drop a happy birthday in the comments below.
I love a happy birthday. What can I say? Let's see. We're going to start by looking at some reference photos. I'm using my Flower Color Guide, my favorite book. I had this for years, and I know a lot of you have purchased it over those years. I have this photo here of the peony, and I'm looking, okay, it has this enormous center yellow area. And then the petals at the bottom are quite small. Everything is very circular. So I'm looking at those basic forms. P.S. I'm working in my watercolor sketchbook from Canson. It's a really good price. All of the supplies are linked in the video description. All of these are materials that are great for practice because they're not too expensive. And I am mixing up a little of that light pink. I'm using Jaune Brilliant with a bit of white, a bit of pink. And I'm actually going to start with the center. So grab some Naples yellow. This is Naples yellow with a bit of white in it. And we're just going to paint that big stamen, that huge center area. Right away, you can see that I'm not going for detail. I'm going for shape. The stamen was large and oval, and that's what I put on the paper. And then I'm coming in with this light peachy pink that I mixed up, and I'm just trying to paint the entirety of the flower, of the petals, as one shape. So I'm looking at it, it's thinner across the bottom, it's wider across the top, and it's very circular overall. So that's what I'm putting on the page. And then I'll do my little bud here as well. Circular comes to a bit of a point. This simplifying practice really helps me because I tend to get hung up on details and I add too many details, and I don't always get the basic forms right. And then I always do the same thing. I try to make it better by adding all these little things, and that's not always good, especially if the form's not right. So this is a great practice for me because it has allowed me to see the beauty in simplicity. Not to mention, I'm getting my bearings when it comes to form and shape. And if you would like a little extra help with this painting practice, there is a worksheet this week. So this week's bonus material over on Patreon is a watercolor worksheet. And if you're thinking, I want weekly bonus goodies, I want watercolor worksheets, well, it's only $2 a month or $22 for the year to sign up, and you get access to the entire catalog of worksheets that are already over there. I did some large oval leaves that come to a bit of a point, and then that's done for now. We're going to let it dry. We'll come back to it. And the next flower I want to paint together is this beautiful Sweet William. This delicate flower will be a great test of our simplifying ability because at first glance, it just looks like it's made up of all these teeny tiny little parts. But what I'm focusing on are the large clumps of flowers, and then the sort of triangular shape of the little clumps of flowers towards the top. I'll start by mixing up the color. I'm using purple with a little bit of magenta and white to give me this really warm pinkish purple hue.
I want to take just a second to thank Native for sponsoring today's video. Native makes daily staples like deodorant, body wash, toothpaste, and more. I use their deodorant and I love it because it is the only deodorant I've ever worn that doesn't feel like you're wearing deodorant. Not only that, Native deodorant is aluminum and paraben free, as well as vegan and cruelty free. And they use clean, simple, effective ingredients that you know, like coconut oil and shea butter. They also offer very long-lasting odor protection, 72 hours to be exact. The texture, as I was saying,
it's not sticky and it feels dry while you're applying it.
And that brings me to the best part, the scent. I got jasmine and cedar. Jasmine might be my favorite floral scent, which is the perfect blend of floral and woodsy. I also got sea salt and cedar, which is like ocean breeze through a pine forest, something like that. And then I got unscented because I always love unscented products. There should be more unscented products in the world, and Native does unscented body wash as well, which I use every day. 3 deodorants would normally be $39, but if you use my link and code Shayda4, you'll get them for $27, and that is over 33% off.
Let's get back to our Sweet William. I switched to a smaller brush. I was using a number 8 round, now I'm using a number 4, and I'm starting by painting those clumps of flowers. So right away, I feel like I'm getting too detailed. Just paint the clump, Shayda. It doesn't need to have really any negative space. It's just a shape. So if you have some reference photos, you can just Google Sweet William. Doesn't have to be the same as mine. Look at the shape of the overall larger clumps. Then look at the shapes of the flowers as they reach up towards the sky. These smaller blossoms are sort of triangular shapes, and that's what I'm trying to capture here. I've mixed a little bit of sap green with green gray and deep phthalo green, and it's going to give me this nice sort of bright pea green color. And I'll start adding some small leaves. They come to a bit of a point. I'm just going to place them here in amongst the flower clumps. Once I've painted a couple, we'll start joining everything together with thin, fairly straight stems. So we're focusing on the detail of the forms and shapes. Thin, straight stems. We need to make sure that all of our little flowers, have a stem. They're all attached to something. The leaves are a little smaller up here towards the top. So I'm just going to add a few more of them. For a delicate flower made of these itty-bitty blossoms, we have some rather large shapes, but I have to say I really think this is working. I'm going to finish up by placing 2 more purple triangular clumps or blossoms at the top there. And then I'm going to walk away. I don't want to add a lot of detail. Our next flower is the China Aster, and this kind of looks like a combination of an aster and a chrysanthemum. And it's very shaggy with all these tiny little leaves. So I'm looking at the kind of circular shape. I'm looking at the curve that the leaves have, the way they curl away from the stem. And that's what I want to start with as I put paint to paper. Those are the things I'm thinking about. And I'm mixing purple here with a little bit of white and light blue. That sort of aqua color, light blue that's in the Mungyo set mixed with purple gives a really lovely periwinkle. And then I also added a bit of white to my green, and I'm going to make a circle, and that's just the center of this flower. From there, now that I've got my circular center, I'm going to take that periwinkle color and just go around like a donut, make a circle, very simple. You can smooth it out a little if you want to, or lift a little bit of the paint if it's too dark. And then I'm going to do that shaggy edge, but instead of focusing on each petal, I really just want to make like a shaggy halo, if that makes sense. I'm not thinking about painting one petal at a time. I'm thinking about the overall shape of the outside of this flower. Like, what is the shape of the perimeter? And you can paint as many of those as you like. When it comes to the stems, they are fairly straight. We're using a dark green. I'm using deep phthalo green here, mixed with just a hint of sap green. You can add a little purple to it if you want to cool it down. And then I'm thinking about how those little leaves sort of curl away from the stem. So look at your reference photo, and we're thinking about shape and form. We don't need to capture any smaller details. Okay, with those 3 flowers on the paper, we can step back from our sketchbook, and I like what I see. We've really focused on form and shape. We haven't overdone it on the details. So let's turn back in our book to the page with the peony on it, or pull out your reference material. And we are going to add a little bit of detail, but we're just not going to overdo it. We're going to keep it simple. At least that's what I'm doing. You could head in any direction from here. And so for the peony, I just used a mix of that raw sienna and brown to add a little bit of detail to the stamen. And then I could do some simple veining on the leaves. You can see I'm just keeping everything very basic. I want this practice to be all about simple. And then there was some shading. There was some darker pink on that peony. So using a deep magenta, I'm just putting a little bit of coloration on the flower, but I'm leaving it at that. So we're not going for realism here. Now, when it comes to the Sweet William, I'm doing a few little lines and dots. The lines and dots are going to help give the impression that there's all these tiny little blossoms. So we're sort of hinting at that, but we've simplified in a really beautiful way. So we're simplifying, we're abstracting a little bit, and I just love the effect that it's giving. I'll put some straight lines down the center of each leaf, and that's all it needs. And then when it comes to the China Aster, I want to make a circle around the center using a darker periwinkle. You can just mix a little bit more violet into that periwinkle, or a little less water will work. And then we'll put some lines on that outer halo, that outer crown, but we don't want to overdo it. Think of it like this. You want to do the least amount, You're doing the least to make the most of this flower. What are the least amount of brush strokes that you can do, the least amount of details you can capture to still make this flower recognizable as what it is? The result is this really beautiful yet simple, sort of illustrative graphic floral, and it doesn't have to be your style, but it might inform your future style, and it's definitely just great practice. Now, with these 3 done, I thought I have room for one more here. So I grabbed the book. I found I wanted to add some yellow. We're going to do some yarrow. It's a lot like the Sweet William. I'm looking at the shape of the flower blossom clumps, and that's what I am going to start with a beautiful deep yellow. I'm using a mix of yellow, orange, and raw sienna. I am painting the clumps, and then I'll come in with the green and add the shapes of the stems. You know, my problem is that I always overdo it on detail. I'm sure for many of you, you're thinking, I hate adding details. I'm not good at that. But for those of you that are cursed by just overdoing it and you don't know when to stop painting, hi, me, this is a great practice exercise. And if you're in the same boat with me here, comment below and let me know what works for you in terms of knowing when to stop, knowing when to walk away from the painting. I've said this before in many videos, but as I watch the footage back, I'm often like, oh my gosh, it looked so good. Why did you keep going? Stop, girl, stop, please. And I just watch myself overdo it and overpaint. Anywho, I just added a few dots on the yarrow of a slightly darker yellow. You can mix a little bit more raw sienna, a little bit, maybe even a red brown to darken it. Add a few dots to those clumps, and that is all you need. Let's label our little watercolor sketchbook practice. I'm going to call this Simplified Florals. And all I can say is I love the way they turned out, especially the Sweet William and the Aster. And I can't wait to do more practice pieces like this one. Thank you so much for watching, friends. Head over to Patreon to get a helpful watercolor worksheet, help you simplify those flowers. And I will see you soon with a new tutorial. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button.